Hello, it's so lovely to see you all. I have the honor here and the privilege of having absolutely no pressure because I'm here to ask you questions. I know Ramit because years ago, I think probably 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
I was moving to America from England, and I heard about you. I can't even remember where. You were everywhere, and I tried to make friends with you, I think probably is what happened. I thought, oh, he'll teach me to be rich. This is wonderful. And then we met and he was a delight. And I thought we're going to be mates as well. So that's where we are today.
Yep.
7 years of friendship. I am richer than when we met. So
Check.
yeah, 2 birds, 1 stone. I am going to be asking you questions. And I guess the topic of today is very interesting because it's love and money. And how the two co-mingle,
Yeah.
which you have lots of experience in, being a married man.
New experience in it. I thought it was simple before I got married, and then I got married and I realized, wow, it's a lot more complicated than I thought.
Yeah.
So that journey, which we are just starting, we're just under 2 years married, is evolving, and I'm learning so much. And now the questions that I'm getting from people on Instagram or email are really a different tenor than they used to be. It used to be, you're in your 20s, how do I afford to go out for drinks on a Friday night in the city? And now questions about my partner spends too much, or we were raised differently and I can't see, it's usually my partner spends too much. That's the number one, okay? And then there's a whole bunch of other ones, but that is by far number one. And how do you deal with it? I find it endlessly fascinating because most of us don't know our own attitudes about money. And then when you combine them with somebody else who probably has not developed their point of view about money, suddenly it's 2 people not blindly leading the blind, but criticizing or focusing on areas that are tiny and minute versus developing a shared vision of money and life together.
Well, so then take me through, because you say you're newly going through some of these things, but you're a lot further ahead than I am. And we were talking backstage, and I said this is going to be easy because I am genuinely curious about all of the things that you've encountered.
Yeah.
So start me at the beginning of you and Cass are together. You both are bringing your own paradigm when it comes to money. And then when it came to marriage, you decided we're going to have that conversation about the prenup.
Well, we started talking about money probably, I think it was either before or right after we got engaged. And I totally broke my own rule about talk about money early, and it just sort of didn't come up. And it's easy to not come up. It's easy to, you kind of have a rhythm about who's paying or little details, but having a big conversation about money is something that it's easy to put off. So I already knew more about Cass's financial situation because she had asked me about some 401k thing. And then at a certain point she said, this isn't really fair. I'm kind of uncomfortable because I feel like you know more about my situation than I know about yours. And in reality, she didn't really know anything about my financial situation. And so I was kind of taken aback because I realized wow, that's pretty hypocritical of me, and I want to open up, but I had never really done it except to some accountants and things like that. So we sat down, we had a conversation, and we talked about money, we talked about net worth, we talked about what kind of life do we want to lead. And I remember this amazing Stephen King speech where he talks about growing up, he was living in a trailer with his wife, and in this National Book Speech Award, which was the first time Stephen King had ever been invited there, he said that he had toiled over this book and it wasn't going well, and he told his wife, he said, I got an offer to be a teacher, I got to give up writing this book. And his wife said, well, when will you have time to write? He said, I'm not. And she said, well, you can't do it then. You need to keep writing. So he kept writing. One day he got a huge book deal. And he said he came home and he talked to his wife. He said it was the most pleasant conversation they've ever had, and they cried and they talked about what they were going to do with the money for the rest of their lives. So I'd been inspired by that. And to sit down and talk to Cass about money, but more importantly about life, about what do we want to do, what kind of life do we want to lead. That was definitely one of the best conversations about money we've ever had.
I mean, money is one of those stereotypically uncomfortable conversations for people. Why do you think that is, particularly in relationships?
Okay.
And what stopped you, because you're equipped in many ways to at least talk about that subject, so what do you think stopped even you from doing it for so long?
Well, I think, how many people here are in relationships? Let's just see. Okay, great. And how many people here, whether or not you are in a relationship, feel uncomfortable talking about money with people close to you? Yeah. You know, when I see people thinking about talking about money, this is the body language, rigid, and I don't know what's going on, but I know I'm probably doing something wrong. And the worst feeling in the world, in America, is the feeling of being judged. And so we do anything we can to avoid talking about it. I think for my situation, I was very conversant in talking about personal finance and compound interest, but talking about relating it to us together was something that I just didn't have experience in. I had never done it. And so it was easy to put off until another day. But once we had the first conversation, it was awesome. We started to get on the same page. We were, open about things like our wedding, our engagement ring, all this kinds of stuff. And so all of that was going well until it wasn't, which was when we started talking about having a prenup.
Well, this is wonderful. It felt like we were going to cut to commercial break there. No, not now.
I've been watching a lot of Bravo TV. It
was perfect. It's going to have the Netflix countdown timer. 5 seconds till next episode begins. Well, tell me. I want to hear about the troubles.
So this, for us, when we sat down to talk about the next steps in our relationship, first of all, Cass, who's here in the audience with her parents, my in-laws,
which was a bold choice.
I love them. They're here visiting, and they have become even more important in our rich lives, as maybe we'll talk about with travel. But they're here visiting, and we've loved it. So we started talking about, that sort of official conversation that you have about your relationship when it's really serious. Are we going to have kids? Where do we want to live? What do we want to name our kids? I have some very specific that I don't want some kid running around with certain names. I don't want it. So we talked about this. We brought a Google Calendar alert. We brought a full agenda to this meeting, which people think is weird, but I think it's weird to have a meeting without an agenda.
Right. So you're an efficient man.
That's right. So we sat down, and then at the end of that meeting, I said, it's something that I haven't talked about before, but it's important for me that we sign a prenup. And probably one of the most scary moments in my adult life where your heart is pounding. And I think as an adult, you don't feel that too often. I felt it then because I had no idea how it was going to go. And pretty much everything that I had read about prenups was, it's usually some rich asshole trying to take advantage of someone else. That's sort of what you see in TV, and that's the stereotype, and that's what I grew up with, because nobody in my family or social circle had prenups. That wasn't the situation. Most of the family friends we knew were engineers or doctors, and it's not part of our culture. And so, but I had done my research, and I had spoken to a lot of friends who were older than me. And one thing that I love about our relationship is we love to ask people who are older or a little bit further ahead, like, what should we know? Oh, you have children, what should we know? You're married, what makes a happy marriage? We asked our in-laws, and my mother-in-law said, 2 TVs. Very good advice, Mom. And so Cass was surprisingly open to it. As you can imagine, she was caught off guard, but She said, you know, I wasn't expecting that, but I'm open to learning more. Perfect. That's all I could ask for. And I think one thing that went well in that conversation was I basically walked through why. And that was something that with love and money is so important, is to say, look, we grew up with very similar backgrounds. Both of our moms were teachers. We grew up with close families. We're still close to them. And just by virtue of some choices I made in my career and through a lot of luck, my business has grown. And I said, look, you can see the kind of lifestyle I lead. I'm not buying Ferraris. Like, I work from home. I've lived in the same apartment for 10 years, but I have this business that I've grown. And it's really important to me that the work that I did before we got married is something that we discuss about what might happen in the worst situation if for some reason we're not together one day. And this is where my heart was pounding, because like, this is a conversation most people never have. And I never expected to have this conversation ever. But the situation called for it. And I think that, so we talked and she was really open, and we started having more conversations, right? This is not a one-time thing. You need to talk to lawyers and you need to start learning, writing all your assets down and all this stuff. And that's where it really started getting hard. It really started getting hard because we were not communicating in a way that was joint. It was starting to be yours, mine. It was starting to be us kind of arguing over terms and numbers. And okay, there's some back and forth you need to have with some math, but really this is a joint agreement with somebody who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. It's not some car sale where you're trying to maximize profit from someone you're never going to see again. It's like the opposite of that. And at a certain point, we were just spinning. And Cass said, you know, I think this is not working out in the way it needs to. I think we need to go see somebody. And she was talking about a therapist. Now, we had never seen a therapist, but I was like, yes, because we both were like, yes, we've both been in self-development. We know kind of sometimes you need help. And so we went on Yelp and we searched therapist. And then we just like walked over. It was like so close. We're like, oh, cool, it's so convenient. So I guess that's how you find a therapist. I don't know, that's what we did. And we walked over there and we had a series of multiple conversations about why is this causing stress? Why is it really raising our tempers in a way that never have? And I'll tell you like one thing about me. So anyone here familiar with 5 Love Languages, right? So great book, great concept, and we have read it together. And my love language is acts of service. That's what I love. I really appreciate that. And Cass knows that, and she is awesome. I don't need words of affirmation at all. Like, it does nothing for me. I'm like, I already affirm myself all day. I don't need it. I write my emails, I'm like, that's hilarious, send. I don't need it. But what I discovered in this therapist's office was I actually did need words of affirmation for this thing. The fact that I had successfully grown my business, that I've been really disciplined about saving and investing. Like, I followed my own advice, and it now gives us the ability to explore the world in a way that we never would have imagined before. I certainly never would have. That, I realized in there, and I was surprised myself, that I actually wanted words of affirmation. I wanted her to acknowledge that, which shocked me because I never needed it before, never once. So that therapist was so helpful to us, and we sort of were able to get back on track. We signed it, we had an amazing wedding, and then from there, onto our honeymoon. But I would say I was like, we were both like, good, done, signed, great, that's behind us. And I think that it was, and it is, and we're so happy that we went through that process. Now was sort of the rest of our lives together, building money together in our own relationship.
So what questions do you ask yourself now that are different to the ones you were asking then? Because then it was almost like we're creating a template or a structure for how we're going to make decisions moving forward. But now you're married, you're making all sorts of money decisions all the time.
Yes.
How do you have that conversation now? Has the philosophy changed? Do you share the same values today with money? Do you still discuss these things?
We talk about it more because you have a million decisions to make. So, what kind of bread are we buying? That's like the sort of smallest decision. Where do we want to go if we're traveling this year? Who do we want to bring with us? Can we bring someone? And all of those questions. So I would say the volume of questions has gone up, but because we have this basic shared understanding, that we have a framework. Like there are certain things we get basically the cheapest chicken there is. We're not interested in the expensive stuff. It's just not for us. We hardly ever eat out. It's not really meaningful to us unless it's a special occasion. Not a big deal. Cass, I have headphones for my work calls. I talk on Zoom with my remote team, and my headphones are broken, so only one of them works, right? And then the other one fell off. So I just twirl it while I'm on calls. It's this is the CEO of a business. I'm twirling my headphones every day. She bought me a new pair of headphones, and I was like, I appreciate it, but take them back because I don't need it. My headphones still work. That's not important to me. On the other hand, there are things that are really important to us together. Like we brought our parents on our honeymoon, which is many, many, many times more than the price we'll pay for chicken. So that is something that we're both aligned on. And then there's those kind of thorny ones where we may not be aligned, that we're still trying to work out. And that's like an ongoing process. So last thing I want to portray is that we solved it all. We have not. If anything, I've started to realize that there is no end, there is no destination. You're going to keep making decisions, but each time you make one, hopefully you're developing a stronger point of view, a framework where you can both agree on most of it. We'll probably never agree on a few things. Fine, that's okay. And that's something I actually have been surprised at. You don't have to agree on everything, not even some of the big things with money, but maybe 75%. That's good. Is there anything you've learned about how to have those conversations that you look back now at the way that you were approaching them or having them and you're like, oh, I would definitely not bring it up that way again, or I would not approach it that way again? Yeah, I would not try to build an Excel model on day one. I was like, look at this Excel model, it's so cool, everything flows. Because that showed you'd really made a lot of decisions on your own. Well, or that you'd thought a lot about it. No. That's what I thought. I thought it would show all this preparation, and what I was doing was I was actually bypassing the real work. The real work was to have the conversations about how were we raised with money? What did our parents say around the dinner table? Those little whispers about money. Was it, we don't talk about money in this family? Or was it easy come, easy go? Or whatever the phrases that we grew up with and internalized. That is what we need to start with. And then we need to develop, what do we want? What's worth it? What's not worth it? And then and only then, and way down the line, do we get to the Excel model. And that was my mistake. I started there. That was a huge mistake. It does kind of start on the first date, though, doesn't it? What? The model? I wish. I mean, you come into a first date with your Excel spreadsheets. Look at this thing, it's so cool. The most viral video I ever had was titled "Who Should Pay on a Date?" That was a good one. Masterful answer you gave. Thank you. But it was astonishing to me because when it was a moment on stage, but I had made content about people's love lives for years. And this was not, when we released it, I didn't know that this was gonna be like a viral hit. And then it turns out the most viewed video I've had of all time is money related as it pertains to the first date. Because there's so much emotion around that. There's so much. And I think dating in particular, there's so much hot emotion around who should pay. There's gender roles, there's changing socioeconomic status. and then like there's living in a city like this where it's really expensive to date. The questions I get about relationships, not dating, I should say, but either they've already started dating or they're living together or married, they're not as hot, but they are important and long-term. Things like he or she overspends. Like that's not as hot of a topic as who should pay first. But it is something that is going to affect you for the rest of your life. That's why it's easy to ignore.
So what do you say to people when they say, my partner overspends, it's driving me crazy?
Oh, I love it. I get them all the time on Instagram, and I already know where the conversation is going to go because I've had so many of them. I go, really? Tell me, how much do they spend? And then they go, oh, so outrageous, I can't believe how much they spent. I said, what do they spend on? And this woman that I've spoken about before, she was outraged that her husband spends on iced tea every day, iced tea. This couple
he had a habit.
He had an addiction to iced tea, I suppose. And this couple lives in this city. Maybe they're in the audience.
I would love that.
Please, if you're here, come say hello. She was outraged at the cost, and cost is a very easy thing to be outraged about because, like if my mom saw how much I pay for like pants, she would be outraged. That's why I don't tell her how much I spend on clothes. But anyone can be outraged at someone else, and for that moment, you really feel righteous, don't you? Oh, I might be in 10K of debt, but at least I'm not in 40K of debt. So it allows us this righteous anger to feel good for just a moment. That's why this comparison is so insidious. So she's outraged at him, and I ask her, why? Tell me why. She's like, he could make it at home. That's true. I'm guessing that she grew up in a family like mine where you don't buy the pre-chopped vegetables, you chop it on your own. That's what we learned. That's what mom did. And so I keep asking questions, and she's like getting more and more angry. And I said, hey, out of curiosity, what's your household income? Dead silence. Not comfortable sharing that number. And she finally shares it. Remember, they both live in Manhattan. $600,000 a year. So the gasps in the room, why is that? Because it seems so outrageous that you would be fixating on a $5 expense. But what I learned is a lot of my students have used our programs. They make a lot of money. Just because you increase your income, you're making $100, $200, $500, even $1 million a year, does not mean your psychology went with you. The money part, once you understand how to make money, or you have a business, or you negotiate your salary, that part is math. You're compounding, you know how long it's going to take you to double your money. But the psychology is very counterintuitive. So suddenly, just like I did, I was growing up, I grew up with a certain set of values. You should get your own, you should chop vegetables yourself. But there's this famous phrase, as I became more successful, I was able to afford less. What does he mean? He was not able to afford to mow his lawn anymore because his time was too valuable. He wanted to spend it with his kids. And so these things are counterintuitive. They're not taught. They're not talked about in the public because it's politically incorrect. We all focus on frugality and cutting back. And the I will teach you to be rich way is to spend extravagantly on the things you love, as long as you cut cost mercilessly on the things you don't.
I really love that concept. I follow you on Instagram.
Thank you.
And that concept you have, I really appreciated that. The idea of what actually brings you joy when you spend on it.
Yeah.
And have you ever actually analyzed that? Because we all spend money everywhere.
Yes.
And a lot of the stuff we spend on doesn't even move the needle, doesn't move the dial of our happiness. To actually figure out what brings me satisfaction, what brings me joy. So what if your partner gets joy from spending money on and what you get joy from spending money on are very different, and there is a conflict?
Yes. Super common. And that's where that iced tea example, or he or she is spending too much, really comes from. It's a lack of shared values. It's over fixating on a tactical item instead of let's really talk about what's important to us. what I originally thought was, if your money dial, the thing you love to spend money on, is different than mine, basically, let's battle, and I gotta convince you to see it my way. And I think what I've learned is that, well, first of all, that doesn't work. And second, create something shared together. I would argue that, and from my experience with people in relationships talking about money, almost nobody has ever said, what would we love to spend money on? What would we love to spend money on? And would it be a trip together? Where? What seat are we going to sit on the airplane? Who are we going to take with us? Where are we going to eat? You will notice if you ask this question, go ask your partner or ask your friend, you will notice how people start minimizing their answers. Yeah, it would be really cool to go on a trip. Not saying we have to go for long, maybe just like 4 or 5 days, but like, yeah, that would be cool. Or, I'd love to have a house in San Diego. It doesn't have to be on the beach, but just like maybe like 20 minutes from there. And I always say, like, this is your dream. You don't have to minimize your dream. Why not dream bigger? Again, the IWT way. And then let's see if we can work some way to get that, whether it's earning more, starting a business, whatever. But I always think that with couples or with love and money, what is that shared thing that we both love? That is the most powerful place to start.
I love that. I love that. So as people now get into what they're going to spend money on, if it still comes up that what I love is different to what you love, do you have, because I think it's interesting, if the iced tea example,
Yeah.
I look at that and part of me thinks, well, part of what you love should be having your partner experience joy and happiness. And so if your partner enjoys this, we all enjoy unnecessary things.
Yes.
All of us. Some of the best, greatest joys in life are the unnecessary things. Do you ever coach people to just see the joy in seeing your partner light up in that way, as opposed to worrying in convincing them to come around to believing the same things you do about money?
Yeah. And that's a beautiful way of putting it, to see joy in your partner's happiness, even if you yourself would not make that choice. And I have experienced that watching Cass start her business, and remembering and reminding myself, I told myself, shut your mouth. Do not offer unsolicited help. It's not my place. If she asks, I'll help as much as you want, but other than that, I'm just here to support. And I remember she went through some tough times with her business early on. She's a personal stylist. And I remember seeing her up at like 11 p.m., much later than usual. And I was like, what are you working on? And she's like, I'm looking for a part-time job. I don't know if this thing is gonna work. This was maybe 6 months into it. That's a crushing moment to see your partner struggling that hard. And then in my head to say, I could probably get in there and tweak a couple things. And I'm like, shut your mouth. This is not my place. This is her, she has to go through her journey. When she discovered how to grow her business and she started being very successful, to see that through her eyes was the first time I've experienced that kind of joy. And I think parents, they say the same thing about seeing something through their children's eyes. I think it's an entirely different level, but I started to understand what people meant by that. And so I love what you say about seeing, whether it's an iced tea or a handbag or a trip, it doesn't have to be my way. But seeing joy through somebody else's eyes can be a truly a next level event.
And what's interesting about that is there's someone who's been through that entrepreneurial journey. There are things you've learned about how satisfying it is when you learn how to do things.
Yes.
And when you overcome things. And it's, the proverbial problem, I suppose, not that I know anything about parenting, but about the proverbial problem for rich kids.
Yeah.
Is that difficult thing to manage of so much of my happiness has come from what I've achieved and what I've done and how I've progressed to that level. And now I'm bringing someone into the world who's not going to have to do any of that unless I create an artificial construct for them to have to go and do it on their own. And that, Stephen Fry, I don't know how many of you know Stephen Fry, but he's a kind of national treasure in England, and a very interesting author and very erudite individual. He was asked, what kind of about his life now is truly different in terms of money and how he lives it? Because, you know, he's a very sweet man and he's very humble, and he's the kind of person that you wouldn't necessarily, I get the impression he wouldn't want to talk about money. But he said, I get on a plane, if I'm honest, when I get on a plane, I just can't bear to turn right anymore.
Wow.
He said, I can't turn right. He's a very wealthy man, and he said, that's one of those things that I don't negotiate with anymore. I do sit in business class. He said, but the tricky part is that when he goes on, and since we're talking about love and money, I think there's the love of friends and family and kids and so on. All of that is wrapped up in that. He said when he goes on holiday with friends, when he goes on vacation with friends, he'll often take a different flight.
Yeah.
Because he hates the idea that his friends would go to coach and he'd go in business. And he hates even more the idea of paying for them, not because he doesn't want to be generous, but because he sees it almost as a form of bullying. That, like, this is a patronizing thing to do for I want to go here and I'm paying. I've done that before with a restaurant where I really want to eat here, and you tell all your friends and you realize, well, they say, well, I can't afford that tonight. Don't worry, I've got it. Like, just go. I just really want to go. And you're not necessarily aware of how uncomfortable that can make other people feel.
Yes.
To be on the receiving end of that. So I'm very curious as to how to navigate those kinds of things.
Okay, so I've thought about this so much, and it petrifies me. My number one fear in life would be to raise spoiled kids. We both are absolutely mortified about even the idea. I told her, I'm like, we grew up very middle class, both of us, and I'm like, our kids will not. I'm like, I already hate our kids. They don't even exist. What am I supposed to do with these kids?
Awful, I hate them.
Oh my God. So my stereotype with kids who grew up with parents who have money was what most of us in America think: rich, spoiled, lazy, etc., entitled. I went to college, and at the college I went to, there were many wealthy students, and then some not. You couldn't tell because everybody just wore casual clothes. It was college. And my stereotypes were shattered in about 2 weeks because there were kids who had gone to the best private high schools in America, and they worked super hard, or sometimes they were super lazy. And there were public school kids who were really hard workers or lazy, and you couldn't correlate it at all. And it blew my mind. I remember visiting one of my friend's houses. Guy was super cash. You know, we would always eat cheap stuff, Jack in the Box tacos outside of our campus. That's what we ate late night. And I went to his house, and it was just humongous. And I appreciated him even more.
You connected on your love for cheap chicken?
Oh yeah, 99 cents for two. I'll never forget.
What if you're on the other side of it? You're with someone, you're dating someone, you're in a relationship with someone who earns significantly more than you.
Yeah.
And there's certain things they want to do, but you can't help but feel uncomfortable because you're not able to contribute on the level that you might like.
Yeah, this is super common.
What do you say to people who have that discomfort? Because that discomfort can lead to people shutting down and going quiet too, can't it? But sometimes people go on the trip or they do the thing in the hotel or whatever, and they don't talk about it because they're almost embarrassed to talk. It's like getting to the end of I've been on the receiving end of really expensive meals that someone's taken me to where I've thought, I can't afford this.
Yeah.
And you see them ordering more and more and more, and you go, I don't know what I'm going to do at the end of this meal. And then there's the instinct that, because I've been on both sides of this, there's the instinct to just not say anything.
Yeah, and just wait.
Because you go, I don't know what, the bill's $1,000. If I offer to pay the $70 that I can contribute, is that an insult?
Right.
Or is it polite? Because I'm at least saying, here, I'll do what I can. What do you say to people who have that discomfort? How should they communicate their discomfort to their partner?
Well, somebody wrote me and told me, I thought the perfect and most poignant example of embarrassment and fear around money. They said they were young, they were coming into the city from JFK, and they saw, JFK or somewhere, and they saw that taxi ticker just ticking up, and they were praying, God, please let it stop. Like, should I ask him to just drop me like 4 blocks? I can walk. It's not that rainy. And that feeling, just sinking, seeing that number going up and knowing, man, maybe I'm not gonna have enough for rent. Maybe I'm gonna have to not eat. Like, these are serious things.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most poignant example. That taxi ticker symbol, we've all had something like that in our life. I think with a high earner in a relationship, that person has probably worked hard. They want to sit in a certain seat, or they want to stay at a certain hotel. They want to live in a certain neighborhood or apartment. And now it comes time to work with their partner to create that shared vision. That's a really hard thing. In America, one thing that we will not stand for is to take a step backwards. We will do anything it takes except to take a step backwards. You will almost never see someone voluntarily downsizing or stopping shopping at a certain place and going down. Have you ever noticed that? It's a profound part of the American character. And so when you ask someone who's worked hard and probably still continues to work hard to take a step down, that is almost culturally repellent idea. So then you can either accept that, which is I've found is almost impossible to do, or you can have a conversation where you say, look, this is important to me, but we should talk about what it means for us. And usually the other partner, in my experience, and from the DMs and messages I get, they feel ashamed and they feel embarrassed and they feel like I can't contribute, so he or she is holding something over me. And that is a terrible feeling to have in a relationship. My experience with telling Cass when we were talking about her starting her own business, that was it's a risky endeavor to start your business, go full time, especially because she had a good job before. And I remember saying to her, like, if your business is not doing well 1 month or a couple months, don't worry about it. Like, I have the advantage of being able to sustain us for that time. If it's not going well for a long time, then let's talk. Like, let me see if I can help you. That's what I would expect. But we should take advantage of this. There's no glamour or glory in forcing ourselves to experience hardships that we don't have to. I've worked hard. If your business is not doing well, it's fine.
Yeah.
And that was a really tough conversation for us because I could say it, and I said it repeatedly. I thought once and done. Like, she'll get it, reassured, it's good. No, I realized that we had to have this conversation over and over, and that saying something once rarely connects because there's so many shared values and so many differences that we bring.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough conversation.
And people don't change overnight. You know, we all tend to change very slowly. So I think in any communication, communicating consistently is everything. I want to allow time for questions because I think we have an hour, don't we?
Yeah.
And I think we're at 45 minutes
I think
in.
they'll bring it up in just a minute.
Oh, I'm not supposed to cue you for that? So should we keep talking,
here they go.
or do we need... Ah, you have them. Thank you, just as planned. All right. We have some questions from the audience here. Oh, there's no names. All right. Do you recommend keeping separate bank accounts after marriage? I'll just take my jacket off for this one.
So I do recommend having a joint account and then separate accounts where it's your guilt-free money. And in the iced tea person's case, the iced tea man would have put $5 a day into his iced tea account, no questions asked.
Which would have been the right thing to do.
Yes, the conflict would have gone way down. The important part of setting up accounts, right? The account structure is not that complicated, it's in my book. But the larger part, the place I started from was, like, I brought my point of view on money and I talked about it with Cass, and then We had a lot of conversations about what her point of view was. My point of view is if we're saving like approximately, I think 10 or 15%, if we're investing 20%, I have the exact numbers written somewhere, that's good. We're good. The rest, if we're doing that and we're starting from the place that we want to be, the rest is guilt-free. So if you want to spend on X and I want to spend on Y, fine. But I'm just I insist on these numbers and we should discuss it, but these are the numbers. If we're hitting them, we don't need to worry about any of the rest of the stuff. Do we want to get an extra large, whatever? Fine. And that, I think, really simplifies it. Again, I think with couples, asking about accounts is great. Developing like the 4 or 5 key decisions you want to make every year and writing them down, so important. How much time and money do we want to spend with our family? Right? It's really important to us, so we write it down. What percentage do we want to be investing? Super important. If we get that number right, the rest of our growth and compounding takes care of itself. So if we get those 4 or 5 questions right, the rest becomes really trivial and easy.
Okay. Question 2. Let's talk about the energetics of money.
Okay. Oh boy.
Is that a word?
I don't know.
What are the best financial I don't believe so, but I might be wrong. There's many words I don't know. What are the best financial decisions you can make to attract a partner?
Wow.
And it's written in pink.
Wow. Let me see this handwriting.
Which I think means it's a man in the room who wants us to think it's a woman.
We're going to find you. We're going to see you.
So what are the best financial decisions you can make to attract?
Wow. Okay. I want to share my perspective. I want to hear yours as well on this. First thing is, to put it bluntly, have your shit together. You want to attract a high caliber partner, you better be high caliber yourself. And I think that is a truth that is not said enough. And it could be with fitness, it could be with money, it could be with your career, whatever the case may be. You better have it together. And people can pick up on it. You know, people are very savvy, especially when they're dating for a long-term relationship. People are noticing every last detail. You know, where do we go for cocktails? What are we talking about? Everything. Everybody in this room knows. Right? This is a very savvy audience of daters, and people are paying attention. So I would say that would be the first thing I would say. What about you? What's the energetics of attracting the right person?
Can anyone confirm? Is energetics a word?
Yes.
Whoa.
That went wrong for me asking that question. Damn it. I would say it would be easy to say the step 1 would be have money. That's attractive. But I do think that what's really attractive is a mindset, a philosophy, and an approach to life that says wherever you've been in the past or whatever position you're in now, that you are working to create a better position for yourself. And that is about the most attractive thing. Like, money comes and goes, but character is consistent. And so if you show in your character that, look, this is the position I'm in, I've got some things I need to work out. It's not all pretty, I'm dealing with this, I've got this debt, whatever, but here's my plan and here's what I'm doing. The plan and the execution of that plan and watching someone who's actually delivering on executing that plan, that's super attractive.
Yeah.
So I think that you can instill comfort in someone through your character. You don't necessarily have to rely on money to instill comfort in someone.
Love that. The energetics
Thank you very
are here.
much. I appreciate your energetics. Yeah.
I'm attending an energetics webinar.
Fantastic
after this.
energetics in this room, wouldn't you say, Ramit?
I love the energetics.
This is being filmed, is it?
You want to ask for the lights?
Can we just cut the part where I didn't know a word and just get me saying this? I really appreciate the energetics in this room.
Love the energetics.
Really good. Okay, next question. Do you think it's appropriate to share your salary and savings information with your friends and or significant other?
Ooh, this is a juicy one. I think that if you have a group of friends that it would be appropriate to share this with, you know. And I'll share what I mean by that. When I was in college, I had a group of friends. We would interview at different companies, and we would get together and share what did we learn, what worked, what's a great answer, etc. And we knew that in that group, it was made for people who wanted to share how to get really good at interviewing. You know if you're in that type of friend group. If you don't know immediately, then the answer is no. Because there's a temptation, especially when you become successful with your finances or investments or income, to tell your friends, or certainly maybe tell your parents. And I had this, this was a concern of mine. And I was gonna call my mom and dad and kind of tell them like, yeah, like things have gone well, the business is good, and actually share some numbers. And I asked one of my friends, Chris, who lives in San Francisco, and he grew up in a similar culture and similar lifestyle. And he said, he asked me some really good questions. He said, why do you want to tell them? And he kept asking why and why and why. He's a great questioner. And eventually what I realized was I wanted to tell them so they knew that I was okay. That I was successful enough that they didn't have to worry. And I never would have thought about that. What I thought was, I should probably tell them, but I'm worried because it's gonna be weird. And I didn't know what weird meant, but any Indian kid knows when something's gonna be weird. And I was like, that's gonna be weird, I don't know how, but it's gonna be weird. And what Chris taught me was, you can communicate to your parents that they did an amazing job without getting into the exact numbers. And what I do instead is, so I told them, I called them up, I had the conversation, I thanked them for setting an example for us, for showing us how to work hard. Like they taught me and my siblings things that we are still so lucky to have. But instead of telling them numbers, which don't have any context, we started to create shared memories together. Come to Italy, come to India, just show up at the airport, don't worry about anything else. That's more meaningful.
Is there a difference with a significant other where if they say to you, well, we should know everything about each other, you should tell me the numbers?
I think you should. I think you should. I think with a significant other you should. I think that I should have done it earlier. That was a mistake. My mistake. Sorry. But you should. I think with, now the question is how far along? And that's the question. Date one? Hell no.
What date is the right date?
No date. I think when you go to the next level of the relationship, when you're thinking about moving in, if you're gonna move in together, I think that's a time to have a conversation. It's a natural inflection point. If you're thinking about getting engaged, have the conversation, and please stop saying it's weird. It's not weird to bring a Google Doc to a meeting, and it's not weird to have these conversations. What's weirder is to go your whole life not having the conversation and resenting a $5 chicken sandwich. Please, the conversation is worth it. It's so hard, but it's also one of the most rewarding things you will do.
Your best advice for newly married couples?
Start with what you love. Start with what you love. Don't worry about this person overspending and that. We started by saying what would be the most magical honeymoon we could ever take. And it doesn't have to be whatever works for you, but whatever's meaningful for you. Start with something magical. And suddenly money goes from this rigid place of judgment and embarrassment and shame to, wow, we can do this together. And that opens up so many possibilities. I think that is the best advice I could give.
You, Ramit, mentioned that you and your wife have similar backgrounds. Do you think you and your wife have similar values towards money because of similar backgrounds?
Oh yeah, I think so. I feel very fortunate that our parents taught us the value of work, like really hard work, showing up every day. My father-in-law here has run his own business for a long time, and my mother-in-law here was a teacher for so many years. So Cass absorbed that, and when we met, family is very important to us. Our families met as well. And I think that those values really rubbed off. And I can see it in the way that if I tell Cass on the rare occasion where I have to work overtime, and I tell her, she just gets it. It's never a question of like, oh wow, like we were planning this one thing. Never. She gets it. Similarly, like she's like, this guy doesn't want like a $29 pair of headphones. Like, what's wrong with him? But it's not important to me because my parents taught me, like, focus on the stuff that you want, and you don't have to spend it on all this other stuff. Our challenge has been, as our situation is different, living in Manhattan, being married, being entrepreneurs, we've had to also create our own source of knowledge together. Like some of the lessons that our parents taught us, they taught us the best that they knew. But now we also have to find new places to learn about where to invest or where to go on vacation, and things that just were not part of my life experience because of how I was raised, and I think because of how Cass was raised.
Yeah, and I think we all hear these stereotypes about what we should do as soon as we make a bit of money. And
what do they say?
Well, following you, I remember you saying just buying a house is this idea that we all have, is like the first big step in your life is buying a house.
You gotta buy a house.
And then you
throwing
said,
money away on rent.
this is nonsense. Yeah. It might not be the best idea. And I just say, oh no, I've just bought a house.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
Why wasn't I following him sooner?
Sorry to anyone who just bought a house. This is gonna be devastating. No, it's what I say is, don't buy into the stories that our culture tells us. Critically analyze them. Buying a house can be a great decision, and we will eventually buy a house, right? That's gonna really drive some people on Twitter bonkers. But you gotta analyze the numbers. You gotta realize that you're not throwing money away on rent. That's just a phrase, and there are a lot of people and groups who want you to follow certain advice. Who might want you to buy a house? Let's see. One of the most powerful lobbying groups in the country, National Association of Realtors, the government, your parents, because they bought one and that's what they knew and they think that it's the best for you. There's so many constituencies. And so if you step back and say, hey, is that right for us? Do we want to have X kids and a career for 40 years and hopefully get a pension and X, Y, and retire? Maybe. And if so, that's a beautiful, rich life if you both decide. But for a lot of people, they say, you know what, we're not sure if we're gonna be in New York 2 years from now. We wanna travel more. We want to work remotely. And so step back, run the numbers. And sometimes the numbers aren't the only part of the answer. You got to just do what you want. But I do think we should question the lessons that have been taught to us, and we should be critical about the stories that we're told.
And applying your lesson of knowing what variables are important to you.
Yeah.
And we had dinner the other night, and I've been following your whole, for those of you that don't follow Ramit's Instagram as closely as I do, Ramit just took a trip to Japan for like 3 weeks, and India. There was back to back. Like, you were away, what, 6 weeks?
Yeah.
I find that, as an entrepreneur myself, fascinating. And I'm learning from you, going, how did he do that? Like, that's interesting. That's a different decision than other entrepreneurs make, than other CEOs make. We live in this kind of hustle culture of never stopping and always growing. And that's a philosophical decision, is to say, me and my wife enjoy going and traveling and spending 6 weeks doing that. To me is fascinating, because that in a way is going against the grain.
Thank you.
And I like watching your stories where you show, like, we picked this hotel for this reason, and this part, when we were in this part of the city, we picked a cheap hotel, and here's why we didn't care about price when it came to this.
Yeah.
That fascinates me. You're not blanket, well, I just want the best of everything. You very much are selective about where I'm going to apply that money.
Thank you for saying, thank you for following. I mean,
I'm your biggest follower. I follow everything.
I love how I only discovered
barely any of my DMs.
One of my friends who's a little older than me told me something that I'll never forget. He's a parent. He said, once you have kids, if you allow them to, they will suck all the oxygen out of the relationship.
Are you saying that's me? This is where the analogy is going?
No, unless you fight against it and you make time for your partner. And I've seen that. I've seen that in business. There's a common analogy. If you let the business, it will suck all the cash out unless you prioritize it, right? That resonates with any entrepreneur. Same thing for a relationship. Now, we don't have kids, but I knew that our business and just day-to-day life would suck our time out unless we prioritized. And traveling, I've seen it too much. I have seen it too much where people live life serially. They say, I'm gonna do a business or work my job, and when I'm 55 or 60, 65, I'll retire, then I'll get fit, then I'll travel, then I'll do this. And then we see people who pass away.
Yeah.
We see people who get ill. We've been traveling, we see people who, we go to some places where it's a little difficult to walk, and we think to ourselves, we are so fortunate to be mobile and to be able to do this now. So it would be a tragedy if we did not prioritize it and take advantage. So instead of living life A, B, then C, we want to do a little bit of everything at the same time. We want to be health conscious. We want to work and grow our businesses, and we want to spend time with our family and travel. And we can do it all at the same time. Maybe not every year, maybe not at the level we want to every year, but this is what we're prioritizing.
I love that. And I truly am learning balance from watching you go through that. So I thank you for being vulnerable about your life. Last question, because we are coming up to time, so we'll have to keep this one fairly terse. Is it possible to grow and scale a business / life without the predatory credit system?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, very good.
Okay, the short answer to that is yes. The best, cash is king. You do not have to buy into a predatory credit system. I do think as you become more sophisticated with money, you realize that debt is not always a bad thing, that you can leverage it. That's what wealthy people often do. But if, a lot of times entrepreneurs who are aspiring, they come and they say, how do I raise money? And I say, what do you need investment money for? And they go, I need to spend money on Facebook ads or something. And the best answer to that is to get customers. And if you do that, then you can bypass the predatory debt and credit system, and you can let your customers fund your business and your life. So
I always think the most dangerous thing that could have happened to me at the beginning of my business is someone gave me money to start it.
And you would have no idea what to do with it.
I wouldn't have known how to spend it.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to spend it. If someone gave me a lot of money now and said, here's millions of dollars, grow your business, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know how to spend it.
So just like in business, just like in life, take it slow, have a vision for where you want to go, know that you can change that vision, but for the most part, something that's going to make you and your partner happy, and then every day, just a little bit better every day, working towards that. That is the recipe, I think, for a rich life.
You, Ramit, are going to be doing a book signing now.
Yes.
Whereabouts are you going to be doing it?
I think they will tell us somewhere next door.
What's the book called?
The book is called I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
How many of you have I Will Teach You to Be Rich, the book?
Awesome.
That's fantastic.
So happy.
Half of the room. Not awesome.
What?
For the rest of you, for shame.
Wow, you're the best promoter of this book ever.
It makes me angry, Ramit.
Me too.
It makes me angry. I'm his biggest fan. Go buy the book. It's wonderful and it's practical. And I love that you actually bring your own life into these things. That is why it's compelling to me. Is because I look, what decision did Ramit make about that, and how did he do that? That's true vulnerability and authenticity, and I love it. Thank you for having me, because I feel honored to be on the stage with you. Thank you all for coming, and please join me in giving Ramit a huge round of applause.